Welcome to XYPN Radio, where your host Alan Moore brings you into a community of fee-only financial planners who want to profitably and successfully serve Gen X and Gen Y clients. If you're ready to get the knowledge you need from leaders in your field, learn from forward-thinking advisors, and take action on your own goals, XYPN Radio is the show for you. Here's your host.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I am your host, Alan Moore, and thank you so much for being with us today. Today's episode is one I have been waiting months to do and finally was able to nail down. Andrea Eaton. Her schedule's incredibly busy, but she is a financial planner with Cornerstone Wealth Advisors based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. Now, this firm, which was actually founded by a guy you might have heard of, John Guyton, who has published quite a bit of research about retirement withdrawal rates. Cornerstone was the first financial planning firm to offer a 3-year residency program in financial planning. Now, this is not the same as FPA residency, which is a 1-week training program. So this is a 3-year residency program. And as you'll hear from Andrea, advisors are actually hired to work for their firm for 3 years. And at the end of those 3 years, they leave and pursue another opportunity, just like medical residents. So why would an advisory firm ever do this? What's in it for them? Well, you're going to have to listen to this interview to find out, because I think Andrea makes some really compelling points about the benefits of rolling out one of these programs. And they're actually about to start recruiting for their 5th resident. So obviously they're happy with the program thus far. Now, remember that you can access the show notes and additional resources at xyplanningnetwork.com/38. And be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. All right, here is my interview with Andrea Eaton. Hey, Andrea, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being on.
Thank you for having me.
So I am so excited about this topic. Just a little bit of background. One is that we just keep getting questions asked about something that makes your firm, Cornerstone Wealth Advisors, very unique, which is a residency program, which we're hearing more and more about as more firms roll it out. But y'all were kind of the first in this space. I'm so excited to dig into this. But before we kind of jump straight into the topic, we always like to hear about career paths and how people become financial planners. So could you walk us through just a little bit of your background and kind of what led you to become a financial advisor?
Sure. So back in college, I was an undecided major to begin with, and an advisor at the time, not a financial advisor, an academic advisor, recommended taking classes in a bunch of different areas, and whatever I was interested in, it would likely tie to a major and then eventually a career that I would like. So I landed in, my undergrad was human development and family studies. So a lot of, sociology, psychology, interpersonal relationships. And, sometimes people think that financial planning is quite a leap from that, but it really isn't, because we're really in the relationship business. So my senior year, I learned about this thing called family financial planning. And I really wanted to go to grad school, and my dad really encouraged me to do so. So I learned about this program that Texas Tech was offering, and they were one of the first universities to offer a graduate program in financial planning. So senior year of college, I took a little trip to Texas to make sure, from South Dakota State University, to make sure that's kind of where I wanted to spend the next year and a half or two while earning my graduate degree. So I ended up doing a graduate degree there, learned a lot. And during my time there, I took a class to find an internship because, at the time, people said that if you find an internship, oftentimes that can lead to a job. And I knew that I wanted to end up back in the Midwest. So I was very intentional about the kind of firm and internship I found and searched for. So I knew I wanted to work at a fee-only comprehensive financial planning firm, which really narrows the field, and emailed a few firms in the Twin Cities area and ended up hearing back from John. So I started as an intern. And so I did a year of graduate school, and then in the summer, I did an internship here. So I still had a semester left of graduate school, and halfway through my internship, John offered me a position to come back full time after I graduated. So I did that and went back to school, started here full time, and I've really transitioned. I think my initial job title was financial planning associate. So, like any new financial planner, doing more supportive things, answering phones, filling out paperwork. And over the last, 11 years have really transitioned to financial advisor. So that's kind of the long and short of it.
So that's awesome. And I'm glad you actually bring up a couple really cool points. One being that your undergrad was actually in family and consumer sciences. And this comes up quite a bit in terms of actual financial planning programs, because my financial planning program at the University of Georgia was actually in family and consumer sciences. And so some of them are under that. Some are actually in the agricultural department at colleges. Some are in the business school. But you're absolutely right that family and consumer sciences really teaches you a different set of skills that I think are actually more useful even than some of the skills that they teach in the business school, simply because it's a little more of the human side and a little less of the numbers side, which I think is good.
Yeah, I agree, because when I think of my fundamental undergraduate classes, I think one was adulthood and, just learning about how people transition through adulthood and what kind of life stages they're going through or transition points. I mean, that class is way more valuable than some corporate finance class.
Yeah, I never understood finance. I'm that has nothing to do with what we actually do on a daily basis.
Right. Our joke with the residency program is finance majors need not apply.
Which, is funny because I know at Georgia, at the business school, which we had, I think, a top 10 business school when I was there for public universities, and they called financial planning finance light, and that anybody that couldn't get into the finance program just came over to financial planning. And I don't think they realized just how different. I'm not going to say better or worse. It's just different. If you're talking about going and doing finance for a big company versus doing finances for individuals and families, two totally different skill sets that literally, I would say, have no crossover outside of the fact that they have the word finance somewhere in the title.
Yeah.
But so you went down to Texas Tech. I did not realize that you went to Texas Tech. I have been to Lubbock, Texas. I would say that it was prettier than I expected, but I'm not sure. It is so out in the middle of nowhere, though. It's amazing that, you go there for the site visit and get excited about going, but it is a top program. So.
Yeah. Well, and I grew up in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, which is a town of 120,000 people, and Lubbock was 200,000 people.
Seemed like the big city.
Yeah.
And so one of the things about Lubbock, I remember when I first landed there, because they do actually have airplanes in and out, was that they bragged about being the most rural big city in the country. And I think that was defined as it was as far away from another major metropolitan city, which was an 8-hour drive or something crazy, which was kind of funny. So it really is out there, but there's not a lot of firms in Lubbock. So to your point about getting an internship, no matter what, you were probably going to have to get outside of Lubbock anyway, but you're really intentional about where you wanted to go.
Yeah. And with Texas Tech had a lot of students from Texas who wanted to stay in Texas. So I had less competition when searching for internships because, I wanted to be outside of Texas.
And you said you just kind of emailed around. Is that really how you found your internship, was just sending emails and kind of cold emailing folks, and John responded?
Yeah. Yeah, I think...
I love it.
Yeah, I probably... Because I was looking in the Twin Cities area and Wisconsin, and the Minnesota people... I think you have Wisconsin roots, so I hope I don't offend you, but the Minnesota people were much more receptive to me. Yeah. So,
and I hope that that's encouragement to students out there, that sometimes you just have to put yourself out there and just send the emails. And I think what happens is people think, well, one, I think they hear their friends that have, degrees that don't really lead to jobs, and they're struggling to, even get a call back whenever they're submitting their resumes for a job, much less cold emailing people. But in financial planning, there are a lot of jobs, and I think there are a lot of jobs that are available, but there's even more firms that could hire you for internships and associate advisor positions that don't necessarily have jobs posted. And being willing to just kind of put yourself out there, send those emails, because worst case scenario, you don't hear back. That's the worst thing that could happen. Right.
And I think just taking a little extra effort to make whatever email or contact personalized. Mm-hmm. I remember instead of just sending the same email to 20 different potential employers, the same email, but I'd customize it like, I looked at your website and this specific thing on your website really interested me, and I'm looking for a fee-only firm, and just making that little extra effort, because that email, now being on the receiving end, sometimes is not easy to ignore.
Exactly. And I can say, like I said, being on the receiving end now, it's kind of funny to look back and go, I can't believe I used to do these things when I was applying for jobs. I wish I could give you all this information. And we can tell when it's a canned email. It's not hard.
Right.
It very obviously wasn't written to us. But, even just basics like, I would argue the vast majority of students coming out of financial planning programs have no idea the difference between fee only and commissions, or, broker-dealer versus RIA. Just to even, say that that's what you're interested in really does give you a leg up. And if you emailed 20 firms, custom emails, you probably spent a day of actual time researching and sending these emails. And ultimately, that's what ended up, leading to your career with this firm, was the fact that, you sat down for a day and wrote those emails, which is just awesome. So encouragement for all the students out there.
I think luck plays into it too, just being in the right place at the right time. But
if you never put yourself out there, then you don't have the opportunity to get lucky if you don't send those emails.
Exactly.
So could you tell us just a little bit about kind of your path from associate advisor to lead advisor? Because you're very young to, be in I would argue to be in the position that you're in, especially considering kind of the average age of financial advisor. So how did you move up kind of once, really from intern all the way up to kind of a lead advisor at your firm?
I know that it wasn't laid out for me, like, okay, if you do this, then you reach the next step. And if you do this, then eventually you'll be a lead advisor. It was more organic than that. For me, like beginning to build relationships with clients was a big deal. It was hard for me being so young, and, I'm not an extrovert. And I think what was really important in the process, the transition process, is my boss, John Guyton, is such a great mentor to me and the other people here. So, and he's really good about like, okay, we've hired this person and they are good because such and such, or, congratulations to Sarah, who just passed the CFP exam and now she is a CFP. So really him building up our reputation, I guess, with our clients, I think helps a lot.
I think that's huge because, I hear stories about advisors. I didn't exactly work for any advisors like this, but I hear advisors that will say things like they'll call their advisor a kiddo, or they'll say things in meetings that they think is cute and funny, but it's actually kind of demeaning. And I think it undercuts trust that the clients have in the younger advisors. Whereas if they can do the things and be intentional about building trust with the clients for the younger advisors, if the clients trust John and John trusts you, the client's going to trust you. That's just kind of the way it works.
Right.
But to your point also, it's huge to find a mentor. It's important to find someone who is going to take the time to help develop you and spend the time that it takes to, be sure you're successful, because, John kind of been there, done that, went through a lot of the pains of building out the firm, and then, can kind of give you the mentorship to help you move up the ladder a little faster, I guess, than some advisory firms allow their younger advisors to do.
Yeah. And I think another part of the transition process, I was just thinking like, okay, what else was it that really got me to where I am. And I think it was growth of the client base here at Cornerstone. It's like, okay, so I was doing, more paraplanner things to begin with, but, as we got more and more clients, it's like, well, there's only 3 people here at Cornerstone, and Andrea, you can do more, and I wanted to do more. So I think just it was natural growth from, a client-based standpoint and just me professionally.
No, that makes sense. And just being willing to kind of take the reins and chase those opportunities when they're presented, that, if you have the opportunity to take on special projects or take the lead on a random client relationship because it's the one that everyone else is too busy, then you absolutely can. So kind of the core topic, obviously, we want to be sure we hit on is the residency program. So can you give us just a little bit of history of what caused y'all to even start the conversation of this residency program concept instead of doing more the traditional, just hire an advisor, have them be with you for their career? One, I guess, define the difference in program, and two, just kind of where did it come from in y'all's mind?
Sure. So back in 2006, 2007-ish, all that was here was John, who's the principal, and then me and another advisor. And we would hire interns, part-time interns, for like 6-month stints. Well, then it got to be like, okay, well, we need more help, but we don't need to hire another advisor yet. And then knowing that we didn't yet have the need for another advisor, we didn't want to, bring in an entry-level paraplanner and not really have a career path for that person, because we just didn't think that was fair. And at the same time, John was having conversations with a planner in Florida, Carolyn McClanahan.
Yep. So Carolyn, for listeners who don't know, Carolyn is a medical doctor turned financial planner. So I was wondering if she was involved in this just because her medical background.
Yeah, I believe her and John had a conversation at retreat around this same time, like 2007, 2008, about, what if there was, like there is for the medical residency, when you have all the medical knowledge, but you don't yet have the bedside experience. So that's what the medical residency is. What if there was the same thing for financial planners? So that's really what started, or what caused us to feel like it was the right time to create this residency program. So it was really, we as a firm needed more help, but we didn't want to hire another advisor because we didn't feel like we were there yet. And, it really helps the profession out too, and I can get more into it. Mm-hmm. But every new financial planning grad knows that planning firms that are looking to hire typically want that 3 to 5 years of experience. Well, how do you get that if everybody wants you to already have it?
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like this was a way of being able to hire people that wanted to be advisors. They were advisor personality. That was the training that they wanted, but recognizing that Cornerstone wasn't going to have an opportunity for them fast enough to probably keep them engaged. And chances are, if you had hired someone without the residency program to fill a position, and then you weren't giving them the ability to move up, they probably would have left Cornerstone within 3 years anyway.
Yeah, and maybe I didn't articulate it well enough. So when we thought of a residency program, we thought, okay, 3 years, because that was, at the time, that was the experience requirement.
For the CFP.
Right. So during that 3-year time period, the resident would, by the time they left, have enough experience here and have done enough for our clients here to really put themselves out there as a financial planner. So at their next position, they would be able to take that, more full-fledged financial planner position.
And there's so many details of this I want to dig into, and we'll ask some of the questions that I know advisors ask about these programs just because it is such kind of a new, novel concept in financial planning. But I would also argue that one of the advantages, obviously we need advantages to the firm, we need advantages to the new hires or to the residents coming in, otherwise they wouldn't be applying. And, I have seen, in financial planning that sometimes your career path is a challenging one because clients, but more importantly, other advisors of the firm, if you come in as an intern, sometimes they always view you as the intern, even when you're a lead planner, and you're doing all this stuff, you're still kind of looked at as the intern. And so sometimes making the horizontal move out of a residency program that you go into a new firm with a ton of experience with the CFP, with this, with Cornerstone on your resume. And again, you're kind of ready to hit the ground running as the advisor for clients, which is awesome. And I think that that's something that not a lot of 25-year-olds can say they've been developed into inside of just kind of a traditional financial planning firm.
Mm-hmm. See, and I would say, speaking from my personal experience, I don't think clients viewed me as an intern when I was here, after I was here for, a certain period of time. And I think that I owe a lot of credit to John framing me as well as other employees here as, not simply an intern or a resident that will be gone in 3 years.
You're not just the help, you are an advisor, and you're part of the core team that's serving the clients.
Yeah.
So you kind of laid out, we're thinking about this residency program. It's going to be 3 years. And again, you kind of liken this, and I guess the name probably came from medical residency, where, you come out with the book knowledge and then you spend time in kind of different areas to try to figure out what do you really want your specialty to be. In medicine, obviously, you could go cardiology, you could go oncology, you could do a lot of different family practice, whatever you want to do. But in this instance, it's really giving you a full scope of what life looks like inside of a firm. And so I guess, what does that 3 years look like? So someone comes in day one, they get started. What kind of, do you have a career path or a training program for those 3 years that's pretty well defined for the residents?
Yeah, it is. So I'm looking through some notes here because Christine D'Amico, our first resident here, she actually did a few presentations about her residency experience along with John, FPA conferences. But, so early on in the residency program, you're working, I think, very much like maybe a paraplanner or whatever the term people use now is, so you're working to establish relationships with clients. You are doing a lot of support tasks, paperwork, calling clients to maybe schedule meetings, follow up with various things with the custodian, just learning what it's like to be at Cornerstone or whatever financial planning firm the resident is with. And this might be different than a typical entry-level financial planning position in that residents are in about 5 client meetings per week right off the bat.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. Because really, it is the immersion in the client experience that really sparks the residents' motivation to advance in their career. And then as the resident moves on, they're increasingly involved in those 5 client meetings. So maybe towards the second year of the residency, they're not simply taking notes during those client meetings. Maybe they're leading the discussion of one of the topics during the client meeting, as well as during initial or prospective client meetings or even plan presentation meetings for new clients, being more involved in the creation of those plans and also presenting some of those plans. And then by the later part of the person's residency, taking even more of a role in client meetings and the plan presentation. And along the way, clients are viewing that person, that resident, differently too. Whereas, maybe initially a client is still emailing me about things, well, maybe I'd say starting in the second year, if not before, clients will start emailing the resident directly.
And it's so amazing because I don't think advisors appreciate sometimes just how powerful sitting in on those client meetings are. That's where you really learn to be a financial planner. And I think that the model that a lot of firms have taken, which is, their younger advisors just aren't in the client meetings for the first few years. I think it really shortchanges their education and learning as well as probably some of their abilities. But it's kind of funny as you're going through this, I'm just thinking, well, probably most firms could actually use this as their 3-year training program, that at the end of 3 years that you graduate into being a lead advisor at the firm. You have incentive that, and I guess we should go back and define the fact that at the end of 3 years, there's no job waiting on these advisors at Cornerstone. I mean, the intention is that they leave you after 3 years, correct?
Correct. I think that's neat from a resident standpoint because, Alan, as you were saying, sometimes people get an entry-level planning position and then they end up leaving within 3 years anyway. Mm-hmm. I mean, with residency, it's laid out for people ahead of time. And, so when it comes to, okay, you're 2 years in, what do you want to be doing after 3 years? And making some connections. And it's not like the resident is doing this in secret. We're very much supportive of helping that person find their next role.
So I'll actually say, so you mentioned that Christine was your first resident. So way back in 2009, I actually remember when this program was rolled out, and I do not for the life of me remember how I found out about it, but I was actually one of the original or one of the applicants for the first residency program. Now, I'm betting there were dozens and dozens and dozens of people that applied for that first position.
Yeah, we have pretty consistently about 30 candidates apply for each residency position.
That is incredible. Most advisors can't find 3 to 5 people to apply, much less 35.
Yeah, and maybe this goes back to a little effort putting into it too, because what we do is email the residency kind of job description to various CFP program directors around the country. And then it's up to them to spread the word to their students. But I mean, that is really all we have done to advertise the residency slots.
That was going to be my question, is where you're recruiting from. And the answer is through the CFP program directors at just basically the major universities with CFP programs.
Yeah.
And I don't know that a lot of advisors think to do that. Now, because your position's a little unique in that, and part of the reason I had actually applied for the position was because I remember thinking, I'm not sure that Minneapolis is where I want to be long term, but this is a 3-year position. This is not a permanent, job move where I'm looking at, being here for the rest of my life. It was intended that at the end of 3 years, I could move and either go home to Atlanta or go somewhere else if I wanted. But you can really recruit from any CFP program because that is the case. You don't have to worry about whether or not Minneapolis is the top city for those, for the applicants, because at the end of 3 years, they can go somewhere else if they don't like it. And actually, Minneapolis is a pretty cool town. So, they may find that they love it there. So
plenty of young people want to move somewhere far away from home for at least a few years.
Right. Then we tend to start looking, back at home, being like, it'd be really nice to go back, now that I have a kid and have grandmom help me out from time to time. So speaking from someone who lives in Montana and has my kids' grandparents live in Georgia. Yeah. But no, and so I don't even know that most advisors are recruiting from even the CFP programs in their area, much less nationally. But okay, so you're recruiting through the university programs, you're getting 35 applicants, which is huge. And I guess the big question too is what are you looking for in your residents? I mean, what makes someone a good fit for this program?
I mean, it's funny how easy it is for people to kind of mess up right off the get-go as far as like, okay, if you're going to write a cover letter, put some effort into it and do some Googling on how to write one and what it should contain and, have a properly written resume. I mean, it's kind of what you hear across the board, across any profession. But I mean, we have a big focus here on being involved with the Financial Planning Association. Mm-hmm. So I think, any student or any candidate that has FPA involvement has a leg up from the beginning. And then really, I mean, what we look for in a resident wouldn't be a lot different than what we look for, in hiring anybody here. How do we think they'll mesh with the rest of us in the office? Because, we only have a handful of people here. And, just their motivation to learn and a lot of who they are and what kind of resident we think they'll be comes out during the interview process.
Fair enough. Because I do think that I remember it being an interesting position to interview for, because you get in your mind that, you have to basically figure out every company you interview with through your career seems to be like, this is going to be my career forever. And you're actually applying for a short term, 3 years isn't that short term, but in the grand scheme of things, for a shorter term position. And it is a little different, in terms of kind of how you approach it. And I should probably add, just in case listeners are wondering, there is no bad blood in the fact that I was not the first resident. It was probably a very good decision that, that I haven't had a position for 3 years yet. So probably a good thing. I'm not sure I would have made it all 3 years just because I tend to get bored easily. But I do remember being so excited about the concept. And I am very excited because we've seen it be successful now. And so how many residents have you had? So you had Christine first, and then how did kind of the resident hiring progression go from there?
Sure. So the idea too, ideally, a firm would have 2 residents kind of at all times, and you hire them staggered. So, you have a resident start, and, everybody knows training takes a lot of time, and it's also, we think, a learning opportunity too. So you have a resident start, and then midway through that person's residency, you hire your second resident. So part of the first resident's job is to train that second resident, and then the pattern would continue.
So how many residents, I guess, have you had in total, including the ones you have there today?
4.
Okay. So how many are there currently? Do you have 2 currently?
We have 2 currently. So Christine was our first resident, and then Sarah Cantor started kind of as a part-time employee for about a year, and then we wanted to hire another resident. So we went through all this, the 30 applicants, which she was one of them because we encouraged her to apply, and she ended up getting chosen. She had a leg up because she was here and like in-person full-time interview. The pressure is really on. And then we now have Sarah Cantor and Amanda Moore. Amanda started in mid-2014. So we will be hiring, and maybe this is a good advertisement, we will be hiring for another resident to begin in May or June 2017.
2017. Okay.
So we'll start that process this fall.
So for any juniors out there, or if you're graduating in December and think you can find something else to do for a few months, definitely apply. So I like the staggered start, and not only for your benefit that you've got this kind of built-in training program, built-in continuity. You're not, having to bring someone in fresh every single time, which, as you said, is such a time-consuming process. But in addition to everything else that you're providing these residents, when they graduate, they have training and management experience, and they're not even 25 years old.
Yeah. And I remember Christine saying, like, how much training really made her learn even more, because that's the way you truly know what you know, right? Mm-hmm. Or if you can teach somebody else what you know, it's like, okay, I know what I'm doing.
Yep. You don't know it till you can teach it. And for anybody who has ever tried to teach somebody something, that rings so true. So we've been talking a lot about all these great benefits to the residents. And I think it's pretty apparent. I mean, you come in, you train with, a top firm that is heavily, heavily involved in the professional associations, has a great reputation that is very nationally known. You get kind of this 3-year condensed training program that at the end of it, I mean, heck, if at the end of the 3 years you want to go start your own firm, you could, or you're in a great position to go and get a job with pretty much anyone. I would argue that if with the residency program on your resume, you are going to get an interview at most firms, especially in the fee-only space, that are aware of what's going on. You get cool experience. You get to go to Minneapolis for 3 years. It is a cool city. Hope you like the snow. But it is such an awesome opportunity for young planners. I think that is apparent. Mm-hmm. The question that comes up is, what's the benefit to the firm? We talked a little bit about the fact that, okay, well, we don't want to have to promote them immediately to advisor. We may not have a position for them. But I hear a lot of pushback around these programs on why would I recruit someone for 3 years and then have them leave me? What do you say to advisors that that's their concern, that they're going to basically train someone for 3 years and then they're just going to disappear?
There's several answers to that question. One is, at some point that resident could be your next career track advisor, but you don't have to decide on day one. And so with that being said, I think that is an advantage to the person or the firm who begins this residency program. If you don't need an advisor now, but maybe will a few years down the road, a resident is a great test run, just like an intern might be, but an intern is gone after a few months. Another advantage that, is a huge advantage of the residency program to a firm is the advisors are able to serve more clients. We calculate that each advisor can serve 15 to 25% more clients because they're able to offset some of the other planning duties to a resident. And also on those more clients served, those clients are more profitable just because, you've got your overhead expenses already covered. So, that's a huge advantage. And another advantage is your firm is seen as a leader in professional development. Clients really enjoy seeing us foster new talent, and we or firms hiring residents have an advantage in attracting new talent. I get emails quite often from candidates or potential candidates saying like, hey, are you hiring for the residency program? And, another benefit is, your firm makes a significant contribution in the future next generation of leadership and financial planning.
Yeah, because you're really grooming them to be financial planners and to stay financial planners. And I think that's we don't talk a lot about all the talent that we lose because, young advisors and great talented young advisors have really bad experiences in their first job. And they ultimately end up leaving the profession because I think everywhere is like that. But, and I think to emphasize your last point or second last point, I'm sorry, is that, for top candidates, especially if you're in a town without a lot of CFP programs. Now, Minneapolis, you actually do have a few CFP programs nearby, but some of the top programs are honestly not near big metropolitans. Lubbock, Texas, yeah, I guess it's sort of near Dallas. It's at least in the same state. University of Georgia is an hour and a half from Athens. Kansas State is in the middle of the state, not near a major city. A lot of the top talent, Virginia Tech, they're coming out of these top programs. They're not near your firm. And so the ability to say, look, and again, you don't have to be here forever. It's okay. We know you want to end up back in San Francisco. That's okay. But you can come here for 3 years. You're probably I would argue that you're definitely able to recruit talent that no one else is able to recruit simply because you actually put an end date on it and gave them a career path. which is probably kind of another piece to this is not only did you say you can go home after 3 years, you actually have a training program. No one else has a training program. And you've actually had to define what are we going to do for the next 3 years to be sure we get the most out of having a resident, which is wildly beneficial. And again, probably something firms could adopt for folks that they intend to keep long term, but it's like they don't have the incentive to do so.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think, too, another advantage to having residents or, any new employee is just a fresh set of eyes. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And not being combative, but it's like, why are you doing it this way?
Sure.
Having somebody ask that versus well, that's kind of what we've always been doing.
I mean, you have the advantage that you're cycling in top talent or cycling through top talent and getting a lot of benefit from them. And I remember, I guess kind of an aside, but when we were talking to some tech development folks, and I remember someone who hires lead developers told me, he said, ultimately lead developers will always leave you because there will always be a better opportunity one day. But you don't hire a B player or C player just because you can't keep an A player long term. You get them in and you use them and you learn from them and you benefit from having them there and recognize the fact that they're going to leave one day. And I don't think we've accepted the fact that in financial planning, your first job is rarely your last. I think I'd have to look up the numbers, but I mean, millennials are moving jobs every 3 years on average anyway. So this kind of ties in with that. But again, you're getting the ability to use the top talent while they're there, understanding that they're going to leave. And you even kind of threw in the caveat that I didn't realize was that, y'all are open that if you have a position open up or you grow to the point that, within those 3 years you could hire, you just had a 3-year job application, a job interview that lasted 3 years, if they're going to be a great fit long-term, and they're going to know that too. And again, kind of emphasize the point of not having things to be done in secret. If you have somebody that comes in that wants to go home after 3 years, you don't have to hide that, and they don't have to feel like they're hiding an interview in secret. After 2 years, they can start interviewing for jobs and say, yeah, call John Guyton, call Andrea Eaton. They know what I do, and I work with them, and they're going to give me a letter of reference. What an amazing opportunity and offer. So, well, awesome. Well, Andrea, thank you so much for coming on the show to talk through the residency programs. Like I said, there are so many questions that get floated out there because advisors have seen it and they've obviously seen a few write-ups, but they may not have seen the presentation by John and Christine. And so just thank you very much for taking the time to come on and talk us through it. Now, you can tell how fired up I am about the residency program. I'm obviously a huge fan, but I do hope I was able to ask the tougher questions, which you might have been thinking as we went through the interview. I do hear a lot of pushback from advisors that say this type of program just isn't worth it or isn't sustainable for the financial planning firm, but I think they're being a little short-sighted. You'll have to let me know what you're thinking in the VIP forums. Let me know if there were additional questions I should have asked or additional questions that you have, just about the residency programs. Now, in order to be able to ask questions in our VIP forums, be sure to join the VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP, where you can ask questions to XYPN members, guests that we've had on the show, Kitsis, myself, as well as even vendors, but more importantly, other members of the VIP community. It's a great place to come interact and learn more. Thanks so much for joining us today. We'll see you next time.
You're not alone, and you're not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm. And that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.